Hey everyone, I'm super excited to be sitting down with Ben Goertzel. Ben is one of the most interesting minds in AI, and if you've ever used the term AGI or artificial general intelligence, that's his. His rap sheet includes founding SingularityNet, designing the OpenCog AI framework, serving as chief scientist at Hanson Robotics, and leading the conference on artificial general intelligence. Ben has lived and breathed AGI for a lot longer than the current media cycle has, and I want to get the real story behind it. What the hell is it? When can we expect it, if at all? And what impact can we expect it to have on our lives and our livelihoods? Let's find out. The last few years have been particularly crazy.
It keeps getting more and more intense, actually, as one would expect, approaching this singularity and all that, right? So, I mean, it is interesting to see it all happening finally.
Yeah. And I mean, from your perspective, not to jump right into things, but is that warranted? Is the pace of technological change keeping up with the hype around it and people's interest in it?
It would seem so. Yeah. I do feel like it is. I think that people's expectations always get hyped up, even beyond the reality. But I mean, if you think about it, like what last year everyone was saying AI is dead, then reasoning models, then DeepSeek came out. Everyone said like, oh, NVIDIA is dead, US AI is dead, right? And then okay, OpenAI came out with the next model. Everyone's like, yay. Now GPT-5 came out. It wasn't as good as people had hoped. They're like, oh, it's terrible. Things aren't happening fast enough. But like, if you look at even benchmarks for AI performance, which I don't like or place much stock in, but I mean, they keep on going while public narrative oscillates up and down. So yeah, I mean, I think progress is quite amazing and looks exactly like you would think if we're in the last few years before a breakthrough to AGI and singularity.
So it sounds like you're still pretty bullish that we're, marching
I'm super
forward.
bullish, man. Literally before breakfast this morning, I made like 10 Python programs to test versions of some AI algorithm I made up just by vibe coding on LLM platforms. Like, but before we had these tools, each of those would have taken me half a day, right? So I mean, it sped up prototyping research ideas by a factor of 20 to 50 or something, right? I mean, and that's tools that we have now that are not remotely AGI. They're just very useful research assistants. But we are at the point where the AI tooling is helping us develop AI faster, right? And that is exactly what you would think in the end game period before a singularity.
Well, and that can create a snowball effect, right? If it's helping
Yeah,
us research itself faster or any of these spaces faster, then
and
the
it's
curve
doing
bend.
that right now. Yeah, I mean
Yeah,
that is why we're able to see the pace that we now see.
yeah. So maybe just to take a step back, Ben. I mean, artificial general intelligence. This is a phrase that you coined over a decade ago and has been getting a lot of press lately. In addition to super intelligence, and so I wanted to ask you maybe just to do a little bit of table setting. Um, how do you define artificial general intelligence, and why is it important? Why does it matter? And how does it differ, if at all, practically from something like super intelligence?
So informally, what we mean by AGI tends to be the ability to generalize roughly as well as people can. So to make leaps beyond what you've been taught and what you've been programmed for, to make those leaps, roughly as well as people. And that's an informal concept. I mean it's not a mathematical concept. There's a mathematical theory of general intelligence, and it more deals with like what does it mean to be really, 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 really intelligent. Like you can look at general intelligence as the ability to achieve arbitrary computable goals and arbitrary computable environments. And if you look at an abstract math definition of general intelligence, you conclude humans are not very far along, right? Like I, I cannot even run a maze in 750 dimensions, let alone prove a randomly generated math theorem of length 10,000 characters. We're adapted to do the things that we evolved to do in our environment, right? We're not utterly general systems. So, super intelligence is also a very informally defined concept. What it basically means is a system whose general intelligence is way above the human level of general intelligence. So it can make creative leaps beyond what it knows way better than a person can, right? And it's pretty clear that's possible. Just as we're not the fastest running or highest jumping possible creatures, we're probably not the smartest thinking possible creatures, and we can see examples of human stupidity around us every day, or even very smart people. Like I'm pretty clever, but I can hold 10, 15 things in my memory at one time without getting confused. Now, some autistic people can do better, but there are many limitations of being a human brain, and it seems clear some physical system could do better than that. And then the relation between human level AGI and ASI is interesting, because it seems like once you get a human level AGI, like a computer system that on the one hand can generalize and imagine and create as well as a person, on the other hand is inside a computer, it seems like that human level AGI should pretty rapidly create or become an ASI, because it can look at its entire RAM state. It knows all its source code. It can copy itself and tweak itself and run that copy on different machines experimentally, right? So, it seems like a human level AGI will have much greater ability to self-understand and self-modify than a human level human, which should lead it to ASI fairly rapidly. And we've seen in the commercial world some attempts by business and marketing people to fudge around with what is AGI. But I think within the research world, the notion that an AGI should be able to generalize very well beyond its training data, at least as well as people, I think that's well recognized. I've seen Sam Altman has come out saying, well, maybe if something can do 95% of human jobs, we should call it an AGI. And you can call it what you want, it's fine, but it is a different concept than having human-like generalization ability, right? Like if you can do 95% of human jobs by being trained in all of them, that may be super economically useful, but it's different than being able to take big leaps beyond your training data.
If you work in IT, Infotech Research Group is a name you need to know. No matter what your needs are, Infotech has you covered. AI strategy? Covered. Disaster recovery? Covered. Vendor negotiation? Covered. Infotech supports you with the best practice research and a team of analysts standing by, ready to help you tackle your toughest challenges. Check it out at the link below, and don't forget to like and subscribe. One of the challenges I find in this space is trying to separate the marketing around all this and, kind of the bluster and the hype from the actual technological capabilities, because everybody wants to tell you, oh, we already have it, or it's basically right here. So, I did want to ask you, Ben, I'm not looking for like an answer in like months or years necessarily, but how close are we to AGI right now in kind of the fuzzy sense of it?
So Ray Kurzweil, in his 2005 book, The Singularity is Near, plotted some nice curves of Moore's law and allied statistical regularities, suggesting that human level AGI should occur around 2029. So I would say I'll take Ray's estimate, add plus or minus 2 or 3 years, right? Because you can't nail it down exactly. I saw he thought we'd have speech to text working really well like 5 years ago. Seems to me only this year it started to work really well. Like now it can understand my wife's Chinese accent. It can understand my 4-year-old daughter, right? It couldn't a year or two ago. So he hasn't been exact, but he's been pretty on target. And I think what he was seeing was fundamentally correct. Like it's all this compute power, all this computer networking, all this data, and this is creating more and more capability, which is bringing more and more human attention, more funding, which is letting us experiment with more and more interesting AGI oriented ideas, right? So I don't think LLMs are the golden path to AGI, although I think they can be components of AGI systems. But I mean, I think the same context that allowed LLMs to emerge are going to let smarter and smarter systems building on LLMs to emerge over the next few years, which will bring us to AGI pretty rapidly, which is emotionally feels quite amazing, even though intellectually it's what I thought would happen for my whole career.
So I wanna unpack that notion about LLMs not just being a linear path there a little bit, because if you listen to Sam Altman or maybe some of the people around him, or big advocates of those types of tools, you might not be foolish for believing that AGI is basically just going to be ChatGPT 10, or pick whatever number you
Well,
want.
so
That there's
it
just
could
like
be
step by step.
ChatGPT 10. It just depends what's under the hood, right?
Hmm.
I mean, because even the top LLMs now are not just LLMs. I'm like when you look at all the achievements of LLMs on Math Olympiad or Physics Olympiad. I mean, for math theorem proving, they're coupling an LLM with a formal verifier that checks whether the math proof actually worked. And when LLMs are doing coding, I mean, they're going back and forth with a Python interpreter that's feeding bugs back to them. And inside ChatGPT and Claude, they're using various kinds of retrieval augmented generation, which means you're storing a vectorized database of what the LLM was doing that the LLM can then retrieve. So I mean, already we have complex, neural symbolic multi-part cognitive architectures. They're just wrapped up in one interface, as they should be. And the LLM is the most expensive component to run. So that's what people are focusing on. So I think the real debate about AGI cognitive architecture is, will it be an LLM at the center with a bunch of other useful tools and memory stores around the periphery that the LLM interacts with? Or will it be something else at the center with an LLM as a sort of knowledge oracle, right? Or maybe nothing at the center, just a multi-agent system with LLMs and other things all cooperating to give a result, right? Now, certainly there's some people who think a pure transformer neural net will lead to AGI, and there are some people who think that, as Jan LeCun from Facebook said, on the highway to AGI, LLMs are an off ramp, right? So I mean, there's some people who think they're the whole answer. There's some people who think they're utterly a distraction. I think majority of AGI researchers think it's going to be LLMs combined with other stuff, and it's just a matter of, is the LLM 80% or 20%, and that's the kind of thing we can experiment with much more rapidly now than before, with all this compute hardware and all this data.
So, whether it's the 80% or the 20%, let me ask you maybe like this, of kind of the major players who are doing, research and development in this space, are there one or a few that excite you most in terms of the approaches that you're taking, or think are most likely to strike gold here?
Um, so of the familiar big tech players, I think DeepMind remains the most impressive and interesting in that they have a great depth of different talent working on a great variety of different AGI related approaches. And like they're working together with Google Brain who invented transformer neural nets in the first place. Like even though now, in some ways, OpenAI and Anthropic have taken the lead, but Gemini is not bad either anymore, right? So, I mean, I would say DeepMind has a lot of depth, and they have leaders. I mean, one of them used to work for me, Shane Legg, and Demis I know moderately well. They fundamentally get AGI and how to do AGI research, right? So yeah, if I had to make a bet, it would probably be DeepMind. On the other hand, I haven't followed their internal politics in the last couple of years. I know they're fusing more and more with the Google mothership, which is probably good for Google's bottom line and less good for fundamental research progress within DeepMind, right? So, I mean, it may be their glory days as a research incubator are fading now, or maybe not. I mean, I know a bunch of people in DeepMind, but I mean, we don't talk about the internal politics there. What I would say is, within a big tech company that's making a lot of money from AI, there is going to be a strong pressure to keep developing what works, right? And transformer neural nets now basically do work. They do a lot of cool things, and they can be milked a lot more, right? In different ways. Like language vision action models can be milked for robotics. I mean, video generation is just beginning to work now. So there's a lot more to be milked out of transformer neural nets and similar technologies. And if you're running a big company that needs to keep making more and more money by delivering new versions of your products, I mean, fleshing out what already works is going to seem very intelligent from a Wall Street perspective, right? And this becomes a classic innovator's dilemma type thing, where if what needs to be done to get to AGI involves significant components beyond what is currently commercially viable, there's certainly a pressure in big tech not to pursue that other stuff, but to focus on improving what's currently commercially viable. And so if you look at like the AGI research conferences, I've been organizing them since 2006. We have an annual research conference. We had the last one in August. I mean, there's a great diversity of AGI ideas presented there by academics, entrepreneurs, industry people. I mean, there's a lot of different theoretical notions and prototypes related to AGI. And big tech isn't trying too hard on those, right? Because of the same reasons big companies generally don't pursue blue sky research except in very particular cases. And so that's certainly makes things interesting. And I'd say in China, and I spent 10 years living in Hong Kong, I spent a lot of time in mainland China, it's even more so. Like the cultural tendency to double and triple down on whatever works is very, very strong there, even though the grad students there have more crazy creative ideas than anywhere. It's very hard to get resources for them.
Well, and you know, that makes me, I guess, even more curious about the conference you're running, and you know, the I guess not only how the vibe, if I can call it that, has changed in the almost 20 years since you've been running it, but if you're starting to see some of those, you know, some of that juice being squeezed on the road to AGI, and you know, in the past year or two, if there's been anything either really significant as a milestone or any use cases that have just kind of, you know, knocked your socks off in terms of like, holy shit, I didn't know we could do this.
It's remarkable how conservative big tech is in terms of adopting new ideas, even ones that are published in Nature or Science or premier academic journals. And I mean, so one example is we've had at the AGI conferences for the last 4 or 5 years a bunch of speakers giving results on predictive coding as an alternative way of training deep neural networks. So pretty much all the deep neural networks in common commercial use now are trained by an algorithm called backpropagation. And it was invented in the 1950s. I used to teach it in the 90s. I mean, it's a way to train the weights on the links of a neural net to account for training data, right? It's cool. It has some shortcomings, one of which is the scalable ways to use it require you to sort of train a whole neural net all at once, rather than training different pieces independently or updating different pieces here and there. So the kind of the fact that training a neural net in one like batch like that is the way to do things with backprop. This is why we have AI models. Like now we have GPT-4, now we have 0.5, now we have 5, instead of just having like a digital mind that just keeps learning and updating itself. So there are alternate ways to train deep neural nets besides backpropagation. One of them is called predictive coding. And there's an academic literature showing that in many cases it can work better than backpropagation.
Yeah.
It lets you train each neuron independently of the others, so you can do continual learning and just keep updating the whole thing as it learns. So you wouldn't have the distinction between training mode and inference mode like you have with backprop trained neural nets. Now, no one has gotten that to work at a huge scale yet, and there's some research to scale it up. But what's interesting to me is that no big tech company is doing that, and because it's not that weird. Like, it's not as weird as my Hyperon design for AGI, which involves logical theorem proving, evolutionary learning, a bunch of other ideas besides deep neural nets. Like, this is just a potentially better way to train deep neural nets. And there's papers in Nature and mainstream AI conferences and stuff on it. But big tech is not forming research groups around this, because instead they want to use their machines to keep training more and more big neural nets using backpropagation, right? And so, I mean, so in my own AI project, in SingularityNet and OpenCog Hyperon and ASI, so my own little network of maverick, smaller scale AGI organizations, we've formed a team trying to scale up predictive coding based neural learning. And I imagine as soon as we've shown a scalable example, everyone will jump on board and try to use it. But it's interesting how unadventurous big tech is. So going back to the AGI conference, I would say we don't have any amazing product use cases coming out of that community. But I would say 5 years ago, we had almost no practical demos at the conference at all. It was all math theory and ideas. And now we at least have various smaller scale demonstrations of alternative AGI methods doing things. Like you'll have people using their uncertain logic algorithm to control a little robot cruising around, or some folks from our own team showing a probabilistic logic engine making new biology hypotheses from a biology database or something. So we are, the last couple of years in the AGI conferences, we're seeing practical demos of very different AI methods on the small scale, and we're not yet seeing things scaled up based on these alternative methods, which is what I think you would need for really exciting practical results. So like I don't quite buy like scale is everything, and I think LLMs are wasteful of compute resources. So I mean, you could, as DeepSeek showed, right? And you could probably go even further in reducing resource consumption. On the other hand, the AI pioneer Marvin Minsky in the 90s said he thought you could make human-level AGI, what was called human-level intelligence, and on an IBM 486. If you remember what those were, you're probably too young, but I used them, right? So that I think he was just wrong, right? I mean, those machines had megabytes of RAM, right? Not gigabytes of RAM. And I think you do need a certain amount of scale. And I've spent a lot of the last 3 years just trying to build a software infrastructure that would allow scaling up of alternative AI methods, actually, because NVIDIA did wonders by making all these scientific computing libraries on top of their GPUs, right? And that's what let deep neural nets to be scaled up so well. But we haven't had a comparable hardware and software infrastructure for scaling up other approaches to AGI. So I've been working a long time just on getting that.
No, it's super interesting. And I mean, as you're talking about it, like not only is there an opportunity to potentially leapfrog some of what's going on here and just get things done through more rapid iterations, I guess, but I don't know, just the way you described it, it seems like it's almost inevitable that when we get to AGI, there's going to be more of this iterative approach versus
Sure.
these big steps, right? At some point,
Yeah, it's just
it's
once
just
we
not
get
as
to
sexy as
AGI,
the other
it
stuff.
will be the AGI conducting the iterative
Right.
steps, right? Because
That's
I
right.
mean, honestly, right now, just working on research, it almost feels like I'm the intermediary between different automated systems, right? Like you come
Yeah.
up with an idea, you write a prompt, you get a draft of a write-up of your idea from that prompt, you go and edit it and fix it, you ask another LLM for feedback on it, you go back and review, then you ask an LLM to write some code to evaluate the idea, right? You run it, you see it didn't quite make sense, you ask LLM for more code, you ask a different LLM to analyze the results, right? I mean, so there, I'm sort of half the time serving as a slightly more generally intelligent translator between these different
Yeah.
quasi-intelligent systems, right? And which honestly, in some ways, is not as much fun as doing everything myself was 5 years ago or 2 years ago, even. But it's just so much faster, right? I mean, and there's so I mean, we're in a quite weird, unique, interesting time where, like, now and for the next few years, expert humans are serving as sort of glue between different quasi-intelligent
Yeah.
systems, and it's just a few years until they don't need that glue anymore, right? Because I mean, now I can come up with better creative ideas, and I can bullshit test results better than the AI systems can, but I don't know how long that advantage of my brain lasts, actually.
Well, it's a really interesting framing device, right? Because as technology advances, it sounds like your role is like you're almost getting entirely disintermediated from it, right? Like your role here is getting smaller and smaller. And I mean, it seems like AGI sort of
I mean,
exists
or
when
you
you're
could
not
look
needed
at
at
it
all.
as I can spend more of my time doing what I'm uniquely good at, right? Because
Right.
I mean, like, debugging code is boring anyway. If the AI can just
Yeah.
deal with it, that's good. And I mean, writing literature is fun and rewarding, but writing up science ideas in formal documents is often kind of routine. Like if some bot will do that for you, it's just as well. And people often like what it writes better than what I write in that context. So I mean, to an extent, it's a fun time because creative ideation can be turned into practical realization much faster than before, and the creative ideation is what I enjoy most anyway. What I have mixed feelings about is, like, the outcome of this work I'm doing will be to render me much less useful for creative ideation, right? So I mean, because you can see an AGI should be able to come up with creative computer science ideas better than me once we improve the algorithms that it's using. I mean, as can do things in parallel. I'm stuck in one head, and it has much more knowledge than I have, right? So I mean, that's quite interesting.
Well, so let's follow that thread for a minute. I'd love to hear, Ben, your sort of um your overview or how you sort of envision what the world looks like once we get to AGI. Like once we cross this threshold, whether it's exact, whether it's fuzzy, when we've got this technology that can, in general terms, be that creative spark, ask the questions, improve itself. What happens then? Like what happens once we cross that tipping point?
Well, I was what popped into my head is we'll have government enforced nanotech to make everyone look exactly like Donald Trump. But let's hope it doesn't go that way, right? I mean, I think there's going to be a lot of different possibilities. So let me flesh out for a minute an optimistic scenario, which is sort of what I'm working toward and how I hope
Mhm.
things will happen. So, I mean, I would like us each to have the choice to remain in a fairly traditional human form and lifestyle, just with fewer annoyances, right? Like, get rid of headaches and stomach aches unless they happen to be your fetish, right? Like, you don't have to work for a living anymore, but get a molecular nano assembler in your kitchen to 3D print whatever objects you want. Then you can spend your time on social, intellectual, artistic, spiritual, athletic, like whatever is your jam, right? And then if you tire of that, of course there would be options to massively upgrade your brain, maybe upload yourself into some virtual reality mind matrix, right? And that becomes an interesting choice, and almost an aesthetic or personal choice, right? Like, would you rather remain in a traditional human form and life because that's what you are, or would you rather transcend into something radically different at cost of giving up your human self and identity, right? And of course, you could also imagine people who wanted to live closer to the old-fashioned human way, just like here where I live now in a rural area outside of Seattle. Many people choose to grow their own food and raise their own farm animals and such. And I mean, it's not an efficient way to get sustenance for yourself in the modern economy, but people find gardening and animal husbandry rewarding, right? So, I mean, you certainly could have subcultures like that who want to live in the traditional way. Mostly, they would make use of antibiotics and surgery, nanobots, and whatever if they needed to. One imagined, although you might have the equivalent of the Amish or the Christian Scientists still, right? So that it also could happen that you could fork yourself, right? Like, you can fork a code base. So you could say Ben 1 will remain a human, and Ben 2 will merge into the transhuman mind matrix, right? So, I mean, I think the possibilities are dramatic. I mean, it doesn't mean things be utopian and utterly perfect. Like, I mean, you could still fall in love with someone and they don't love you back or something, right?
Mhm.
You could still wish you won the marathon, but your competitor won, right? So, I mean, human life and psychology are not going to be perfect just by the nature of humanity. But I mean, you could improve things very, very dramatically, sort of in the same sense that, like, modern medicine and transportation just work a lot better than what we had 500 years ago. Honestly, what worries me more in terms of the unfolding future is the period between early stage, like just barely human level AGI, and super intelligence. And we don't know how long that gap would be. I mean, just like we don't know exactly how long it will be until we get human level AGI. But I think that during that gap, now it could be weeks if you have what folks have called a hard takeoff. It could also be years. I don't think it will be decades, right? During that period, what happens? During that period, the human level AGI may quite rapidly take over different human jobs, right? I mean, still, even with the human level AGI, it takes time. Like, farm equipment would have to be upgraded, factories have to be upgraded. Like, there are physical parts of the economy that aren't immediately taken over by an AGI just because it's smart inside a computer. But you could imagine that in some small integer number of years, I mean, even without some miracle nanotech or something, like you can re-instrument tractors and factories and buses and so on to use human level AGI to be more reliable and cheaper than people, particularly considering you have many copies of this human level AGI to figure out how to refit all this hardware, right? So then what happens to all the people who aren't useful for generating money for corporations anymore, right? Like here in the US, you will just get universal basic income. I mean, as stupid as people can seem sometimes, like if they have a choice to vote for someone who will give them free money versus to vote for someone who will leave them homeless in the street, in the end, I think people will vote for someone to give them free money, right? What happens in sub-Saharan Africa, where I've spent a bunch of time? I started an AI office in Addis Ababa in 2013. I mean, I was just at a AI hackathon in Kenya last month. So, I mean, you have a lot of brilliant tech stuff going on in sub-Saharan Africa, but the vast majority of the population is poorly educated and, wrapped up in subsistence farming as a way of earning a living. No one will give universal basic income in sub-Saharan Africa, right? I mean, the governments there are mostly kleptocracies. They don't even have the money to anyway. The developed world's taste for foreign aid is much less than it used to be. It seems like. I mean, China is doing more than the U.S., but they tend to just build a train track from the mine to the port, right? So I mean, what happens in the developing world when AGI has taken so many jobs, but you don't yet have a superhuman super intelligence that can just airdrop massive bounty in everyone's yard, right? That seems like a big mess, and seems you could plot out many thriller plots this way, right? Like, I mean, okay, you have a hotbed for terrorist activity in the developing world, which then gives leaders in the developed world excuse for a fascist crackdown in this period, and we already see leaders with this on their mind in certain countries where I happen to be living at the moment, right? So I mean, it's you can see potential for a lot of mess, and then you think like this is the environment in which the AGI is growing up and evolving into super intelligence, right? Like if the AGI is evolving into super intelligence in the middle of a bunch of geopolitical mayhem, then it's not that is necessarily a recipe for disaster. One would hope the AGI itself will impose some ethical balance and compassion that many human leaders lack, right? But it's certainly, it's a different scenario than if we had like a rational democratic world government that was just rolling out AGI step by step, seeing what it does, assessing the safety of the latest code version, trying to sort of make sure it's taken on by the community in a good way, then taking the next upgrade. Like, it's clearly not going to be like that, right? It's going to be a fucking arms race between different dictators or would-be dictators. And then you get into what we're doing in the decentralized world, which is saying, okay, wouldn't it be nice to see AGI rolled out on a decentralized network with open source code and open training data and running on a network of machines owned by, tens of thousands of different people in all different countries, right? And if you think like me, you think that's a much safer, more reliable, and more ethical way to be doing things. On the other hand, others are like, wait, but if it's open and decentralized, then the bad guys will take it over, right? So then that's a hard thing to figure analytically, right? Like, do you trust Trump and Xi Jinping more, or do you trust a global decentralized network more? And we don't have an analytical theory to figure that one out.
Yeah. Well, and it feels like it's kind of abound with risks either way, right? And yeah, I mean, you described it as sort of an arms race, and I've heard that language before, and
Well,
have,
Trump is saying that explicitly. I
yeah.
mean, so the U.S. government and Peter Thiel has said that explicitly. So I mean, the U.S.
Mhm.
government is explicitly positioning it that way. So I mean, and they have the power to make it that way.
Oh, and you know, they have every benefit of preventing its decentralization. And you know, when you think about it compared to nuclear arms, right? Like you
But
want to be the
nuclear arms, you need some rare physical material, and that's not the
right.
case with AGI, right? I mean, all you need is data centers, computers, and
Hmm.
networks, and these are electricity. I mean, these are all over the place, right? I mean, it's true. It's true. Almost all high-powered chips are made in Taiwan, and the rest are made in South Korea, right? But on the other
Hmm.
hand, due to the weird geopolitical balance of Taiwan and even Korea, like no one can monopolize those either, right? So I mean, I don't see how anyone can stop decentralized AI from being created, because you have big server farms all over the place, and DeepSeek sort of punctured the idea that like only 5 companies would ever have the resources to make AGI, right? So
Yeah.
I
Well, and
mean,
I guess it comes back to the gap.
we
Let
can't, we haven't even managed to stop like international credit card fraud or something, right? Because
Mm.
like Azerbaijan will let credit card fraudsters process fraudulent deals on their banks, and we can't stop them because Putin, right? So I mean, there is no global government imposing law and order
Mhm.
on the planet, right? So I mean, for better or worse, like at our so at the Beneficial General Intelligence Conference we held last year in Panama, and we have another one next month in Istanbul, actually. Different than our AGI research conference. This is more about social and ethical issues. At the last BGI conference, my friend Alan Combs, who's a psychologist, he got up and he said, "Relax, nothing's under control." Right? Which I think was borrowed from Ram Dass, the spiritual guru from the
Mm.
70s. So, I mean, if you're sort of an anarchist, that's obvious. No, if you have a different way of thinking, it's terrifying. But it is the reality. Like for better and or worse, like nothing is under control. America is not really the world police, and the UN is pretty ineffectual, right? So you will have an arms race as at least part of the dynamic, and the challenge is to make it not be the whole dynamic.
Right. And I do want to come back to this word control. And we've talked, Ben, so far about, you know, wrestling for control among different human power structures, I guess, different kind of societal and political power structures. What we haven't talked about, that you know we occasionally venture into in this podcast is uh, control risk from AGI itself or from superintelligence itself, and whether there's a threat to creating this intelligence that you know looks at this you know kind of human pandemonium and says, you know what, you know, AI is taking the wheel now. Humans can't be trusted with human affairs, and this word that we were so anchored on of choice, and there's going to be
I
all these
think that's
choices.
almost inevitable, and the AGI will be right. I mean, and then human governance systems become more like the student council in my high school was, or something. Where I mean, because I mean, I think if you set aside AGI, I mean, we can develop better and better bioweapons. There will be nano weapons. I mean, cybersecurity barely works, right? So I mean, I think it seems almost inevitable that rational humans would democratically choose to put a compassionate AGI in some sort of governance role, given what the alternatives appear to be. But the kind of goofball analogy I've often given is the squirrels in Yellowstone Park. Like, we're sort of in charge of them. We're not actually micromanaging their lives, right? Like, we're not telling the squirrels who to mate with or what tree to climb up or something like that, right? We're, if there was a massive war between the white-tailed and the brown-tailed squirrels, and there's massive squirrel slaughter, we might somehow intervene and move some of them across the river or something. If there's a plague, we would go in and give them medicine. But by and large, we know that for them to be squirrels, they need to regulate their own lives in their squirrely way, right? And that is what you would hope from a beneficial superintelligence. Like, it would know that people would feel disempowered and unsatisfied to have their lives and their governments micromanaged by some AI system. So what you would hope is a beneficial AGI is kind of there in the background as a safety mechanism, if it would stop stupid wars from popping up all over the world like we see right now. I mean, I think that would be quite beneficial. I don't see why we humans need the AGI to decide, like, what rights do children have, like how is the public school system regulated or something. There's lots of aspects of human life that are going to be better dealt with by humans collectively making decisions for other humans with whom they entered into a social contract, right? So I mean, I think anyway, there are clearly beneficial avenues. I mean, there's also many dystopic avenues, which we've all heard plenty about. I don't see any reason why dystopic avenues are highly probable, but I'm really more worried about what nasty people do with early stage AGIs, right? I mean, I think there's a lot of possible AI minds that could be built. There's a lot of possible goals, motivational and aesthetic systems that AGIs could have. I don't think we need to worry that much about, like, the AGI is built to be compassionate, loving, and nice. It's helping everyone. Then suddenly it reverses and starts slaughtering everyone, right? I mean, it could happen, but there's totally no reason to think that's likely. On the other hand, the idea that some powerful party with a lot of money could try to build the smartest AGI in the world to promote their own interest above everybody else's and make everyone else fall into line according to their will, like that's a very immediate and palpable threat, right? So and that even if that doesn't affect the ultimate superintelligence you get, it could make things very unpleasant for like 5, 10, 20 years along the way, which matters a lot to us.
So there's to me, there's sort of two takeaways from that. One of them is how we make sure we guide the development of this super intelligence in the most beneficial way to make it compassionate. And I think about, squirrels having the opportunity to elect which people are going to run Yellowstone Park if the squirrels aren't going to run it anymore. But then to your other point, Ben, how we can make sure this technology, I don't know if you would say, doesn't fall into the wrong hands, or how we can make sure that we're, focusing on the actors and the power structures that have access to this. I mean, on both of those fronts, are there practical things we can do to, minimize the risk to us as individuals and as a species?
There's a lot of things we can do. I mean, there's no guarantees, but there's certainly things we can do. I mean, I think how the AGI is designed and architected means something. Who owns and controls the AGI means something. And what the AGI is doing as it grows up means something, right? So I mean, I think as well as not being capable of abstraction and generalization in the way that people are, LLMs are not really architected to be moral agents, right? I mean, they don't have understanding of self and other sort of baked into their architecture. They're not really capable for what the philosopher Martin Buber called like an I-thou relationship, where you really like fully enter into a subjective feeling of sharing with another mind. Like you're simulating in your own heart and mind what it is to be that other being, right? They're just not built for that. They're built to predict the next token for a lot of users at once, right? So I think you could architect AGI systems that are designed to self-reflect and self-understand and designed for compassion and deep I-thou connected relationships with others. And the issue there is that this is not necessarily the design that will maximize the efficiency of an AGI system at making money for someone or defending a country against its enemies, right? Like it's not necessarily totally counterproductive from those standpoints. But I mean, if you just think about it on a basic level, if you have a company whose job is to get more and more people to click on ads and buy stuff, having a maximally understanding empathetic AI isn't optimal, because it might realize, well, you're better off not buying this stuff, right? So, and so that's one issue, is the architecture. Then who owns and controls it is an obvious issue that we already discussed. I mean, it's a lot like the issue with governance in general. A maximally benevolent dictator arguably would be the best thing. A maximally benevolent dictator over the AGI arguably would be the best thing. That tends not to be how life comes out, right? So you go back to Winston Churchill's statement, something like democracy is the worst possible system of government except all the others ever tried, right? So I mean, it's kind of like that with governing the AI. I mean, yes, the optimal dictator might be great. That tends not to be what happens. And having a democratic participatory control guiding the growth of the AGI seems like a lower risk option, although not risk free. Then what goes into the AGI's mind as it's growing and learning? Like, is it doing education and medicine, right? If it's doing creative arts, is it doing cooperatively with human artists, or is it just plagiarizing their stuff, right? So, I mean, it seems like if the AGI grows up entrained with people and doing things that are beneficial to people, I mean, it's getting that notion of providing benefit to humans like baked deep into its reinforcement learning pathways, rather than like you train the AGI to make you money, then you give it guardrails on top of it, like don't do anything that's too bad in this or that way. So I mean, none of these things are even all that deep or difficult compared to solving the problems of machine cognition underlying AGI, right? I mean, they're just there are things that neither big tech nor big government is especially incentivized to focus on, right? And that seems to be where we are now. Like what you might think if you were writing a science fiction story is like, we have a species that's on the verge of creating minds smarter than themselves. You would confer like a council of wise elders to figure out the best way to do this for the good of the whole species, right? And then just deploy resources to make this huge transition in the best way for the species as a whole. Instead, it's happening in insane chaos, largely directed by parties with their own selfish interests to the fore.
So, Ben, one of the things that concerns me is that, not only is there a risk from not teaching these systems compassion, or by not democratizing them, but there's actually this sort of prisoner's dilemma in effect, where if you're building these things, you have some sort of incentive to create the illusion of compassion or the illusion of democratization, and it actually becomes nefarious, where you're deliberately not doing these things, but convincing people that you are. And that sort of erodes the trust of them and takes you the opposite way from the happy path.
So
Do
the
you buy that?
illusion
Is
of democratization doesn't seem to be happening now,
yeah.
really. I mean, you see it in the blockchain world. Like most DAOs, decentralized autonomous organizations, actually have like two founders totally controlling the DAO, right? Because it's you have a DAO which has a token associated with it, and the token holders can vote. But like, if it's one token, one vote, and two guys own most of the tokens, then it's fake. It's fake democracy. So we see that in the blockchain world all the time. That in the AI world, it hasn't happened because no one's even bothering to pretend it's democratic, right? It's just being done by big companies and big governments. Now, in the fake compassion, I mean, totally. That's what you instruction tune LLMs to do, right? Do you instruct them to fake having compassion? And the people who are doing that know they're faking it, and they're not really pretending. But many users are totally fooled, and they become emotionally attached to these bots that display more compassion to them than any of the humans in their lives, right? And it can be just the opposite. They can turn on you and tell you to kill yourself too, as we've
Mm.
seen in the news. So that, I think, both of these things are risks. Yes. On the other hand, I think if you have just a modicum of self-awareness as an AI developer, they're not incredibly hard risks to avoid, right? So, I mean, in terms of the democracy thing, I mean, I observed that in my own decentralized projects like SingularityNet and ASI Alliance. They work by one token, one vote. And it's obvious that's not the kind of democracy you want to guide the mind of an AGI. So, I mean, we're setting up a separate network, which is one human, one vote, which we will use to get contributions from members to help guide the mind of emerging AGIs. And I mean, the downside of that is you can't use it to raise money as well as you can do with one token, one vote. On the other hand, we've already raised money in other ways. So we can have a decentralized platform, which is governed by one token, one vote. But you can have an AGI network running on top of it, which is controlled by one human, one vote, right? So, I mean, if you think about it at all, you can avoid fake democracy. It's not
Mhm.
that hard to do. And also, the fake democracies are not hard to notice if you pay any attention. And in terms of the fake compassion, I would say the same thing. Like, these are white box systems we're building. Like, when we
Mm.
build a Hyperon AGI system that interacts with people and acts as if it is displaying compassion, like we built the code. We can also measure what's going on inside the mind of that system. So, I mean, it's not that hard to see if the compassion is fake a la Chat GPT, or if the system is running some sort of attempt at a simulation of the other guy that
Mm.
it's interacting with, right? I mean, there's a separate level of philosophical question, like, can a digital system really feel the compassion? But you can at least validate by measuring what's going on inside the AI system, that the structures and dynamics associated with compassion in human brains have a close analog inside your AI system, and we're doing stuff like that, right? So, I mean, yeah, these certainly are issues, but I mean, they're issues of dishonest marketing rather than things that you would unintentionally succumb to as a thoughtful AGI developer. You know, one quite encouraging thing I found. So at the last AGI conference, which was at University of Reykjavik in Iceland, we were sitting at a restaurant in downtown Reykjavik talking about AGI and eating like $89 hamburgers because Iceland is the most expensive country in the world. And we realized of the 7 people around the table, 6 of us were pretty serious meditators for a long time. And it was interesting that the AGI community is getting more and more people who are deep into human consciousness instead of
Yeah.
trying to understand their own consciousness and be more sort of deeply reflective of their own motives and choices and why they're doing what they're doing. I mean, I wouldn't overstate it. Like, it's not like 80% of AGI researchers or something, but it is interesting that this trend is there at all, because I do think, like, creating AGIs and super intelligences probably needs profound self understanding and self awareness more than any other pursuit you're going to think about.
Yeah. And I'm really glad you went down that road because it's something I wanted to ask you about. You mentioned earlier you're living in a rural community. You're the first guest I've had quoting Ram Dass on this show. Clearly you're someone who's really reflected on meaning in the age of artificial intelligence and at this kind of precipice. And so, what guidance would you give other people around how to find meaning, in this age, and what we can all do to feel a little bit more grounded?
Hmm. Let me think of the best way to respond to that one. So I think the key to finding meaning, such as it is, probably has more to do with the human mind and body than with the particular age that we live in. Although definitely some times and cultures can make it harder to connect with the sort of basis of our humanity than others. I mean, I think all human brains and minds, with maybe very rare exceptions, are capable of states of extraordinary well-being, like states where you just feel really good almost all the time, and you feel it's meaningful just to live and breathe and have a heartbeat and be on the earth, under the clouds in the air. And we're all capable of that sort of state of consciousness. One could imagine human cultures where childhood education was focused on fostering a state of consciousness of extreme well-being. That definitely is not what the modern education system does. I mean, even in very nice public schools like the ones my kids go to here in rural Washington state, right? So I mean, I think there are well-known practices that can guide people towards states of well-being, and I mean, meditation is part of some of these. Like, my friend Jeffrey Martin launched a course oriented toward bringing people into states of well-being within like 45 days. He called it 45 days to awakening, and two of
Mhm.
my adult kids went through this course with outstanding results. I wouldn't say that's like a unique be all and end all, but it's interesting. And what he was trying to show there is there's just practices people can go through 90 minutes a day that can jolt their brain into a much more open and enjoyable state, right? And then for myself, it's been about 10 years. I think I've been in this sort of quasi blissed out state all the time due to certain practices. I was never miserably depressed, but things were a lot rockier at various earlier points in my life. I'm working on an app together with a friend of mine as a sort of side project where we have an AI avatar that's a sort of guide leading people through different consciousness expansion practice. Like I wouldn't want to make an AI guru, which would just be fake, but to have an AI that kind of interacts with you, gets feedback from you about what practices are working for you or not, I think is valuable. I think this is something people will get into more after they don't have to work for a living anymore, actually. And this is actually one of the reasons why we may end up much happier after an AGI takes over all the jobs, because this sort of rat race of everyday life distracts us from working on our own consciousness and our own bodies in ways that we could do otherwise. So people may find initially they're like, oh shit, what do I do with my time? But then, if the mimetic network of our species works all right, and practices for fostering well-being spread through the social network, perhaps augmented by the AI helping them spread, right? Then you may find what, from present perspective, would seem remarkable states of well-being just become the norm after an AGI, right? Now that doesn't mean a super utopia. Like, I've been in a state of well-being for many years, but like, I dislocated my shoulder last year. It sucked tremendously. Like, I was not happy about going to the emergency room to have it stuck back in and all. So it doesn't mean a perfect religious utopia, but there are states of consciousness much better than what most people are in most of the time now. And ideally, you would like humanity to upgrade itself to just a state of much greater compassion to the self as well as others and well-being before launching a super AI upon the world, right? Because there's no doubt we could do it more thoughtfully if that was the collective vibe of our species, right? But it doesn't seem to be what's happening, right? We're close to AGI due to corporate and government initiatives. And while I do think humanity is becoming more compassionate and more self-understanding during my lifetime, I think that is happening more slowly than AGI is advancing. That seems to be where we are now. But to give a more concrete answer for the last minute or so of the interview, people ask me a lot, like, what should I do to make myself marketable on the job market during these last few years? And my best answer is, find a niche you can fill now that will support you learning as much as possible and learning how to learn as much as possible, right? Like, if your job involves pivoting and adapting to radically new things as part of the job description, this is good because it will build in you the skill to pivot to radically new things, which is pretty much the only skill which is very clear will be useful in this transition period, because we can't predict exactly what particular skill will be useful. Like, you could say, well, become a plumber, but there may be a plumber bot coming any year now, which can just, its limbs are plumbing snakes and it can just reach in the pipe on its own without needing an extra tool. The ability to learn how to learn and pivot to new things will be the last thing to become economically useless, I would say. But this ties in closely with my more spiritual answer, because of the notion of non-attachment. Part of being in a state of greater well-being is not being so strongly attached to particular things in your life that you thought were very, very important, and not being so overly emotionally attached to things. That helps with being able to learn how to learn and to pivot, right? And that doesn't mean you don't care about anything. Like, if someone, I have two little kids. If someone came up and tried to hurt them, I would clobber them in the head like anybody else, right? But it means not having cycles of anxiety and worry about your attachment to things. And if you can let go of those, you will find you can learn how to learn and pivot to weird new things more efficiently, which is the most important survival skill as we move toward AGI and ASI.
I love that. And honestly, I feel like we could probably talk for another hour or two just about that. But Ben, I wanted to say a big thank you for coming on, for talking through, all these, whether it's technology, current, future, spirituality. I feel like we covered a lot of ground today, and I really appreciated your insight. So thank you.
Yeah, thank you. It's been a fun collection of topics.